Once it was a weakness, the group is a strength on this roster. How does it break down as we get ready to head towards training camp today on Locked On Chiefs?
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, friends and neighbors. Welcome to a brand new week. As we start to get serious about what's coming for training camp, team will start to show up, rookies and quarterbacks, on the 18th, and we have to get prepared. We're starting today with the cornerbacks. We're brought to you today by LinkedIn Jobs, where you can find all the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster and easier. Post your job there for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL, and that's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free right now. Terms and conditions do apply. Thanks to LinkedIn. We have a lot to go over because this group is deep and it's been performing very well. Thank you for making us your first listen as we get into the topics today. We appreciate if you check out another Locked On show, maybe a rival, maybe a national show, whatever you are interested in right now, because we got you covered 24/7, 5 days a week on every show, on every platform around the NFL. So make your next one another Locked On. Make sure you get liked and subbed over on YouTube, as well as the audio platforms on Spotify, Apple, etc., because we're everywhere and you can find us for free, and you always will. Welcome. I'm Ryan Tracy, the founder of Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting, NFL33.com, where you can see my latest on process that these rookies are going to go through here later this week, and RGR Football.
And I'm Chris Clark from Chiefs Corner. Thank you all for listening. We do appreciate it. And if you want to reach out to us, please go hit us up at the text line, 816-357-8781. You can text us. We are going to have a lot more coming, especially with camp coming around the corner. So be sure to watch out for that because there's going to be a lot more communication coming with the text line in the next couple of weeks as camp is getting ready to kick off in just 2 short weeks at this point.
Yeah, it's funny that the rush to get to camp. Normally we're talking, the 29th, the 28th some years, but now we're talking the 18th. Rookies and QBs will be in. Everybody reports on the 22nd. That'll be your cruise into the parking lot at Scanlon Hall day. And then they hit the field on the 23rd. So we have to be prepared for that. So we've moved a couple of things around. If you're waiting for throwback shows or more on the fantasy, we'll retouch on that when we get a chance to fill in. But we got to cover all of the positions, and we're going to get into the corners. This is a lauded group that surprised everyone last season. And so I think it just kind of skates underneath the radar that, they have plenty of things covered. But we've talked all offseason about the L'Jarius Sneed deal coming into the end of his rookie contract. That's a big question mark. It's not a question of whether he'll be on the field or not. It's whether he's going to be under a new contract or not. So it does provide the fact that he has had offseason surgery of some kind. He is recovering. He hasn't been participating in the offseason very much at all. You've seen him on media day and all that kind of thing. So he's preparing for the season as normal. He is clearly the number one corner in this group. And honestly, if they don't get a deal done by, the deadline, they like to negotiate through camp, but probably after that, you're going to shut it down for the year. That's going to be a big question come next offseason. What's not going to be a question is how hard he'll play this season, because I think we've seen him really lead this group in what is overall a very, very young group in progressing week in, week out, year in, year out.
Yeah, and the big question I have right now is he even going to be in Kansas City in 2024? I know we're talking 2023, but if he doesn't get signed before training camp kicks off, I don't know that he will. Because quite frankly, as our buddy Terez Paylor liked to say, the contract year is undefeated, and he is headed into a contract year. So he is going to be doing everything he can to make as much money as he can, which is going to probably price him out of the Chiefs' price range, especially considering the depth they have at this position.
Yeah, I mean,
and I know you don't like saying that. I know you don't like it, but
no, I hate it. For those of you who weren't here a few years ago when L'Jarius was drafted, I was a huge advocate for him to join this team. I didn't think it was actually going to happen because prior to that year, the Chiefs front office had never seen the DBs the same way I do until we started to click. And ever since then, we've been in kind of the same scenario and liking the same players, and I think it's worked out really well. But that's the thing. When you take a 4th-round corner and he plays to this level, it's very hard to retain him. I hope that they can work that out. And we've talked all offseason about Chris Jones being the first domino to fall for that to happen. But what we don't have to wait for is to understand just how much he drives this cornerback room. And with so many young players playing with him, he is kind of the leader of this group. I know he's not a hugely vocal guy from everything that we understand, but that has to be balanced with play on the field. It was one thing when he came in, he was playing with Tyrann Mathieu, who's obviously a very vocal leader. And so in terms of like the DBs across the board, he didn't have to lead. But certainly now in the corner room, when you're talking about taking away wide receivers, he has to be the leader. And they're going to get the best of him this season, one way or the other. Even if he signs a contract, I am 100% confident that you're not going to see that new contract drop off that you see across the league quite a bit. I think he's one of the more hungrier players on this roster, and he's in good position. He's clearly the top of that corner group. And folks, what we're going to do is we go through this series of looking at every player on the roster currently and how they stack up before training camp. Is we're going to use a couple of sites, the Chiefs official listing for their roster, and our friends over at Our Lads, who do a great job in tracking roster changes and stacking their depth chart, which the Chiefs have not done officially. So we'll give you a quick glimpse here because I do want y'all to see it and the way that it stacks up now. L'Jarius Sneed is clearly the number one and is listed as a starter right there at right corner. And that's normal in a two-corner set. We all know that he plays a lot of slot snaps once they go into the nickels and the dimes, where you have at least three corners on the field. Sometimes four, doesn't really matter. Generally, L'Jarius is going to go inside. Does that change this season? That's going to be the big question. We'll talk about why coming up. But I'm very confident in his ability to play, especially if he's allowed to stay on the outside. Obviously, they just drafted their counterpart to the other side in Trent McDuffie, another player that last year was able to play in the slot as well. And I think as far as a duo of your starters, I think that under a contract year and a second year for Trent McDuffie, I think they have the ability to be a top 10 pair in this league.
I would agree with you. And really quick, just so in case people are wondering, L'Jarius' cap number is just under $3 million going into the season. And to be very clear, we've been talking all offseason about how Chris Jones is the first domino to fall. He is, because L'Jarius cannot create the cap room in order to make a deal for himself. Chris Jones is the only way they can clear cap at this point, unless they go and start restructuring other players. So we still expect the Chris Jones deal to get done. That can open up extensions for guys like L'Jarius, maybe Willie Gay, lots of different players we can talk about that way. But when you're talking about L'Jarius Sneed and Trent McDuffie, you're absolutely right. They're in a situation where they have easily a top 10 duo, in my opinion. I think that McDuffie is going to be a fantastic starter. And really quick, I know we're going to be jumping through this quickly, so I will say Jaylen Watson and Joshua Williams, I still count as starters. And I say I'm going 4 deep at corner because you're going to have 4 corners playing on a regular basis. It's a question of whether and who's going to be in where on depending on who they're playing against. I think that's going to play into who could be playing more one week or another. You definitely go 3 corners deep when you start talking about starters, especially considering the league is mostly going with 3 wide receivers. So this situation where it's basically the same thing. I mean, you're looking at the top 3 guys, probably Jaylen Watson is the third right now, Joshua Williams right behind him, and maybe that changes throughout camp. We'll see. Joshua Williams has a lot of skill. It's a question of whether or not he can get to a point where he has adapted to the NFL, and he was still working on that last year.
Yeah. And I think we need to get to that pair as well as who's the next domino. We're going to do that right after this. First, got to tell you about our pals because they're back. And right now, every potential new hire feels like a high-stakes wager for everyone. It's a topsy-turvy time right now in what's going on economically. If you want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates, that's why you have to have LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. So all you have to do is take a look. Maybe you want to fill an editor role or something like that, as we do here. Then you can just put your job post up, turn it to the purple hashtag on, means you're hiring. That will use simple tools to send out all your screening questions and get you in front of the type of candidate that you're looking for. You can judge their skills based on experience, et cetera, and prioritize who you want to have in where. That's why small businesses rank LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. So right now, LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster and for free. Post your job for free over at LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL. You can see that right below me here on YouTube if you're not on already. It's LinkedIn.com/LockedOn. Get your job posted for free. Terms and conditions do apply, though. That said, one job that I'm looking for is, like you said, who's that third? And I feel there's some debate out there, and I agree with you that I think Jaylen Watson is a little bit farther down the line than Joshua Williams is right now. But I feel like in terms of a 4 deep that you have to look at in order to understand not only attrition through the season when you do get hit with injuries, but how a team deals with that, say like this, it's important to have that 4 that, yeah, I can understand where you're coming from by maybe even having them listed as a starter, because there are times when they will have to start. So he is listed right now directly behind L'Jarius Sneed in terms of what our lads is projecting. I don't think that particularly matters. I think if whatever happens, whether it's Trent McDuffie going inside or L'Jarius going inside in those sets, if you need your 4th, I think Josh Williams can play on either side. Do you disagree with that? I don't know if there's enough evidence even.
No, I don't disagree with you at all. I think that that's one of those scenarios where Josh Williams is going to be that guy that's going to be the next on the field. Unless there's a step back that we don't know about coming in training camp. I mean, that's the only possible way that I think it changes. But I do think he's the number 4 guy. I think that, they have the 3 starters listed as L'Jarius, McDuffie, and Watson, which I think makes a lot of sense. I agree with you. I think Williams can play on either side as well. I think he probably wants to just get used to the NFL game a little bit more. I think he played a lot better at the end of the season than he did at the beginning of the season last year, and I do expect that he's going to continue to improve going forward.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. The question then becomes is, what are the wrinkles? What are the subsets that we need to get into? And that brings us to the nickel. We have to talk about nickel a lot because both the Chiefs' outside starters can go in there and play. Trent McDuffie was surprisingly good inside. Was he perfect? No. Did he give up a touchdown here and there? Yes. But as a rookie who missed 5 games early and then came in to not only be a boundary corner, which he was exclusively at Washington, but to go into the nickel, that's something that even on film I didn't anticipate. So that's a big, big bonus, the versatility that allows you. But here's the rub. That's multiple guys being good at nickel and at outside. It's not a dedicated nickel like that's what he is. That's his bread and butter. That's his strength, right? I would say both Trent McDuffie and L'Jarius Sneed are still better outside. Can they both play nickel? Yes, but I think they're better outside. So
to be clear, though, I want to say L'Jarius is probably pretty close inside and out. I don't think McDuffie's quite there, but I think you look at L'Jarius Sneed, I think he's just about as good inside as he is outside.
Agreed. So the question begs, though, with Watson and Williams behind you, who are definitely long, tall outside corners, I don't anticipate either of those guys being able to function well in at nickel. Can you find a dedicated nickel, a guy that's what he's best at? And 2 names come to mind in what we've seen in this offseason. And so in terms of depth, you're going to have those top 4 players. Do they keep 6 corners? That's going to be a discussion we're going to have with the safeties coming up as well, because you're going to have to balance all the DBs. But the 2 names that stand out for in at nickel are Najee Johnson, who made this roster in what was kind of a stretch last season, produced on special teams, and has gotten a lot of run at nickel in this offseason. The other guy is maybe a surprise to most folks, another value pick in Nic Jones, a 7th-round pick again. 2 7th-rounders are the guys that they're getting a lot of nickel looks. Now, does that change when camp opens? It may, but I don't anticipate that. We're going to talk about the rest of the cornerback group here and why, in terms of nickel, those are the best 2 options if you want to try to get someone who can make that his dedication.
Yeah, and Nic Jones is going to be the question mark there. Najee Johnson's been getting a lot of play time, like you said. That's something to watch throughout camp and something that could be a huge battle throughout this camp, because you get into a roster crunch when you start talking about all the different guys and you started talking about safeties a second ago. That's also going to play into who's going to be able to make the roster on this team at those positions. If Nic Jones can't beat out Najee Johnson, Nic Jones may not be on the roster just because you don't know how many guys you're going to be able to keep.
And there is some viability of the DB designation, guys that can play some safety and play some corner. We're going to talk about that coming up on the safety show. That's coming later down the line as we go through every position on the roster before they get to camp. That is our goal. So make sure you're with us every day, because we're here every day getting ready for training camp. We're going to give you every position by every player on this roster. So I personally feel like it's probably Najee Johnson's job to lose if there's going to be a dedicated nickel. Again, he's going to make the roster, I think, either way because of his special teams. So then what comes next? What's the next layer? And that's guys that have to make not only a slim possibility at the 53, specifically if they keep 6 DBs, corners, that is. And then who is like the practice squad call-ups, guys that you don't want to let go off of the roster, but need to be on the practice squad. And I think evolution we should talk about at the top of the next spot here, because I think the concept is changing a little bit. We'll do that right after this. So the concept that I'm talking about is this giant cut down from your full camp roster to 53 men. And it feels like that rule change is significant only because it makes chaos on cut down day that much more like the 7th round of the draft, where everybody's vying, everybody's trying to see the status, right? I think it makes it easier to sneak guys that you want onto your practice squad. And so I'm starting to feel like the roster is 69 guys. It just happens to be 16 of them are sitting on the practice squad and not eligible for the active.
Yeah, and I just want to make a quick point. One of the things I really liked when they had COVID is they expanded the practice squad to 16 players. I think that's phenomenal. I think that's one of the best moves the NFL has made when it comes to rosters in the last 10 years. And I think that needs to be, I don't know, they're going to say expanded even further. I still think they need to expand NFL rosters like the regular roster, but that's a whole nother show and a whole nother topic. But you're right. You start getting into a point where it's basically 69 players now, and that doesn't count any guys that you have on the PUP list or on injured reserve. So in this scenario, I think you're looking at, Nic Jones, if he doesn't make the roster as a nickelback and he doesn't beat Najee Johnson out as a nickelback, and I think he could be a guy that looks, maybe a special teamer as well. Does he make the roster? Does he become a practice squad player? I would think that if he doesn't make the roster, he can get through, being claimed, he's going to be on the practice squad, would be my guess.
I have to agree with you. So practice squad eligible guys. A very popular name, played at Nebraska. DiCaprio Boodle's been with this team for a little bit. Let's see, college free agent in 2021. So he's approaching the end of his practice squad eligibility in the old school, but we know now that they can keep veterans and they can call them up. So I don't see any reason why DiCaprio Boodle, should he not make the 53, and I think he's probably in contention there for that 6th spot if they keep 6 corners. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't want to keep him around. I think that there's still upside in him, and I think at the very least he's got special teams value if they need to call someone up.
No, I agree with you. I think that Boodle is that next guy. Obviously, this is where it sits before we head into training camp, and it's possible that camp's going to change things. They have all these new guys. Go ahead and bring up the list really quick, but they have all these new guys that we're going to be looking at that we're going to get a feel for with camp going on over the next couple of weeks. And, you start looking at guys that haven't been here at the corner position.
Well, this layout's a little bit
Taylor
tough.
Reese, Isaiah Norman, Lamar Jackson, Khalid Felici, Ikao Boyado, Anthony Cook. Oh, no, that's a safety. Sorry. There's lots of different guys on this list that right now they're on the outside looking in. I think one of them likely is on the practice squad as well, because I think they're going to keep that many DBs on the practice squad. The question is, who is it going to be? And I will say it's also possible one of them pushes to make the active roster, but without seeing camp and without seeing any preseason games, it's really hard to get a feel for how they're going to show up, because one of the things we talked about when we talked about wide receivers, and it's just as true with CBs, is you're not really going to know what you have until the pads come on and you're able to hit and you're able to see how do they really turn when they are fully geared up. How do they handle going after receivers when they have full gear on? Having shorts on, you get an idea but you don't have near the vision that you're going to have until you're on the field with, helmets, pads, everything, and you get an idea of how these guys are going to play.
Yeah, I agree. And some of these guys we know. UK Staters know Boyo. I've seen him in playoff games. I'm intrigued. I think that he has the upside to make the practice squad, certainly. Taylor Reese, I think, has the ability to make a practice squad if he rises to the competition. The guy that I'm most interested to see for myself is Khalif Ilasi, because I didn't get to see enough of his film. Western Kentucky is a stretch every year, and everyone knows from my draft prospects that I do like to watch it, because I think it's a program that's on the up. But it's difficult, especially to get the defensive side of the film. Now, Bailey Zappi and what they did 2 years ago got the offense out there a little bit more in terms of the coach's film. Getting the defensive side is really difficult. So we'll talk about Zappi some other day when he takes over for Nic Jones. It's coming, I'm telling you. But I think that's what I'm really intrigued to see, like who steps out of those three: Reese Taylor, Khalif Ilasi, and Boyado. I want to see them compete. And that, I think, is what's going to come down to adaptation from the day camp starts to the day camp ends. That's where it's going. I'm going to put my money probably on Taylor at this point, but I think there could be multiple practice squatters out of that group.
Yeah, and I just want to say really quick, I really hate the number changes. Sorry. Can you bring that list back up? Because
yeah,
you're sitting here looking at a situation where 12 and 13 are DBs. That used to be wide receiver, maybe, QBs. It's confusing when you don't know all the players. I know a lot of the players, but I don't know all the players. Once you get through camp, it's a little bit different. And now here's the other question. You can't have Khalif Ilasi and Boye Doe have the same number, I don't think. You can't have 12 be the same. So I would think that one of those is going to change.
Yeah, I agree with you. Let's check the official roster from the Chiefs site.
I was just looking. They're both listed as 12.
Are they?
Yeah.
Well, we have to give the organization a little bit of leeway. You got to have 90 guys on the field, so there are not that many numbers to go around. But I think on cutdown day that will work itself out. So we just got to get through camp. Break the binos.
Well, but you can't have that when you get to preseason games. You can't have two of the same number on the same side. So somebody's gonna have to change number at some point. So we'll get that information for you when we get it. But I don't like the number changes. I agree with you. I think Boyedo has the ability. You're sitting here looking at Reese Taylor. He has the ability. It's just a question of how these guys show up at camp. How are they going to go against the wide receivers? Are they going to show out against the wide receivers? Do they know the defense? That's also going to play into how this works out. That's one of the bigger things, and we didn't talk about it enough, I don't think, on the wide receiver side. There are some guys that are talented, and I'm just going to say a guy like Justin Ross has a ton of talent. Does he know the offense? That's going to play into whether or not he makes the roster, but it also works in the same way for the defense. Yep. Are some of those guys going to be able to step in and know where they're supposed to be and be where they're supposed to be when you're starting to do team drills? Because if they're not going to make the roster. And if it happens in the preseason game, it's really going to hurt them even more. Yeah.
I mean, that's what makes or breaks not only roster spots, but sometimes careers. So Who are you looking forward to seeing at camp from this cornerback group? Who's your money on in making not only the 53, but the practice squad as well? I know UK Staters are going to show up in the comments. So everyone, leave your comments on YouTube, please. Hit us with your opinion in the Spotify reviews, the Apple reviews. You can get to us that way as well. Make sure you text us at 816-357-8781 if you want into the text line that's coming this season. And then hit us at Locked On Chiefs on Twitter. That's always a great place to put opinion. We'd like to see the conversation as well. So thank you guys for spending your time with us today. A lot of roster rundown coming this week and next as we get ready for training camp kickoff. It's back here again, and the Chiefs are ready for run it back. So thanks for spending your day with us today, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.